an MBA is a general management qualification. What an MBA program aims to do is to give you those core business disciplines in, you know, accounting, strategy, marketing, economics, operations, etc. What I will do now is thinking, I'm going to ask all four of you this question, but I'll frame it in a sense of, you know, there's so many MBA programs in the world. There's so many world-class business schools in the world. You know, even if let's just look at the UK. If I look at the UK, well, you know, there's a minimum of 5 world-class business schools offering MBA programs in the UK alone, and that's without getting into a debate. If you got into a debate, you could probably increase that number to maybe 10 world-class business schools in the UK. Of course, Manchester is in the top 5. But the point I'm trying to make here is, with so many quality schools in the UK, in Europe, and further afield, how did you all come to the conclusion that you thought, actually, the Manchester MBA program is the right one for me? So we'll start with you, Eugenia, and then we'll hand over to Lionel.
Yeah, sure. So just to build on your previous question, the rationale for me actually doing the MBA was that I was living in Germany for quite a while by that time. And by then I realized that, you know, I wouldn't be going back to Russia to build my career there. And I back then only had my master's degree from like a Russian university, which was great. It's very like recognized university. But thinking of, you know, my long-term plans, working for a Fortune 100 American company, being based in continental Europe, doing a lot of business with UK, I was looking for a university which would be like really international. So definitely the fact that MBS had global centers in various locations, it's played a role for me. Also, what I was looking at was the accreditation. So that was an important factor, because I, like, even until now, I don't know, maybe at a certain point of time, I will move to the US. And as you said, Chris, MBA degree, and this degree being internationally recognized, is a really big factor to build your career there. So I think this is still a very big thing for me until now. And yeah, I mean, the fact that this opportunity of blended learning existed and exists until now, that's a major kind of USP, right? I would never go for a purely online course, probably. At the same time, I would never be able to dedicate a full year of my life, you know, to do a full-time MBA. I guess it depends, you know, it depends on the career situation of each and every one of us. But that was my kind of initial rationale. And maybe to share a bit of a success story here as well, because I think it's a fun one. I actually, you know, for many of us, getting an MBA is a way, you know, to increase our career progression, right, to boost it. I actually got a promotion, like in between the moments that I learned I was admitted and my MBA started. So even before starting the MBA, I already got a promotion. And that was an amazing kind of, you know, use, just from the fact that, you know, you as a professional are able to dedicate like 1 or 2 years of your life to this MBA experience. Is like sending a signal to your organization, to your employer, and across the board that you are being serious about building your career. So I think that's a fun one.
That's great. Thanks. Over to you, Lionel.
Yeah, for me, it was three main reasons. The first one was the structure of the program. As Eugenia said earlier, the structure of the program allows you to keep growing in your role while you're working. You're still studying, and like Eugenia, I wouldn't have been able to dedicate the full time of my time for the MBA. The second one, obviously, is the network. I knew someone who had been through the the Manchester MBA, and the diversity of the network was another big point for me to go with the Manchester program. And finally, and this is another important reason why it's the possibility to do your elective in other countries and other cities, so you can keep growing your network and get for those three reasons. That's the reason why I decided to pick the Manchester Global MBA.
Excellent. How about we move to you now, Anisha?
For me, it was a couple of reasons, really. I was based in New York when I applied to the MBA and then moved back to the UK fairly recently. Despite living in the US, I wanted to do a British MBA because I knew that my career progress and future career would be in the UK. And so I thought building my network and working with other people that lived and worked in the UK would be more beneficial to my career progress going forward. A lot of part-time MBAs are done over weekends, and I didn't feel I could commit to that in the same way, whereas with the immersion-based structure of the Manchester MBA, I liked that I had these short, intense workshops where I really felt like I was engaging with my fellow students and learning on an intense level. But I was then immediately able to take that away and go and apply it to business as I went through the program. It wasn't a case of sort of a slower, staggered approach that got all applied at the end. It was very much applying as I went along. And I liked that structure about the MBA program at Manchester. And then I think for me, the final thing that really sort of sealed it was, even though it was a British program, it had an international reputation. Wherever you go in the world, Manchester Business School is a school that people had heard of. And so I liked the gravitas that had to it. You know, Manchester is the heart of the Industrial Revolution. It's where so many things started. It's where the first computers came from. It has such a rich history, and people know the name of Manchester, whether it's just football or whether it's the university, whatever it may be. And I wanted that reputation behind me as part of my career. And so that was one of the reasons I chose Manchester.
Okay, I'd echo those points. You know, a lot of focus on the structure of the program, and I do think that certainly influenced myself. You know, clear, effective structures were sort of visible early on when looking through brochures, engaging with Manchester University staff, and the flexibility associated with that is key as well. Certainly in some of the roles that individuals are discharging, the fact that you could be modular and lift and move aspects, you know, that align to your personal life and career. You know, for me personally, I went into the MBA with a young child, 18 months old. I've exited the MBA now with a second, but ultimately there was a lot going on in my career and personal life at the point of embarking on the MBA, and that didn't deter me though, because you know, ultimately the structure associated with the Manchester Global MBA was flexible enough and modular enough, and the support networks were, you know, readily available to ensure that you didn't have to put that on hold, and you could still go and effectively, you know, advance your career and your learning despite other commitments in your life. So structure and flexibility was key. But if I'm honest, what pushed me over the line for Manchester when assessing a number of MBA outlets was essentially some of the more informal aspects. You know, diversity of thought is key relative to any MBA. There's a few that have touched on that already. I think the first day it was pretty evident when you know, you rock into your inductions, and you know, you sat next to Anisha for one, coming from New York, working in higher education, etc. You know, the next 3 or 4 people beside me, were one from oil and gas, one from fashion and specifically marketing within fashion, another from events and exhibitions. And there was just this real rich diversity of not only career backgrounds, but cultures also. And whilst it's a great opportunity to go and travel whilst learning and physically experience other cultures overseas, for me as an absolute minimum, the rich and diverse mindsets, cultures, personalities that you find in the room on any given day was a big push for me. And I've done a lot of research into talking to some previous individuals who had discharged MBAs via Manchester, and what I found was, you know, there was demonstrated evidence of that diversity, and also demonstrated evidence of some of the benefits that can come post an MBA with Manchester University in terms of opportunities. I'm lucky enough to have a network that includes some fairly senior individuals, certainly across the defence and security sectors, some of which have studied at Manchester University and now hold really key sort of influential positions worldwide.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you everyone for that answer. So many, I think, useful things there for the audience that you've touched on regards to why you chose Manchester, from the global appeal to the accreditation to the network, to the diversity of that network. One of the things that I found interesting, and I got it from each of you actually in small doses, and it's something I believe personally is paramount when you're picking an MBA program. So, for example, I wouldn't say to a participant in the audience to say, pick the Manchester MBA over another school in the UK or another school in Europe because we're, I don't know, higher ranked than them. I don't believe in that. I believe very much in finding a program that works for you, for your professional life and for your personal life. And it's interesting, Anisha touched on weekend MBAs. There are some great weekend MBAs around, but does it work for you? Eugenia mentioned online MBAs in that they didn't have an appeal for her because they were 100% online. Some people will want that, and there's plenty of options available. Lionel mentioned about full-time MBA program, not being able to commit to that, and similarly you could argue with a traditional executive MBA that has about 70, 80, 90 days of face-to-face contact in a 15 to 24 month period. Great program. But can you be away from the office, be away from your family for that amount of time? And then finally, Paul mentioned that he really wanted that modular approach that offered flexibility. So thank you all for that. And I suppose to keep on that strand in how we deliver our MBA program, in that it's a blended learning. We very much believe that face-to-face is key, but we also know that there's a balance. We can't have people constantly coming to the school, leaving their offices, leaving their families, etc. And we also know online is key. So I'm going to split this in two and have Eugenia and Lionel to think about the face-to-face elements of the program, and I'm going to ask Anisha and Paul to give you an insight into the online elements of the program. So perhaps, Eugenia, would you be able to maybe give an insight to the audience of what a typical workshop day or a typical workshop week looks like? Sorry, before I fully hand over to you, one of the reasons I'm also saying that now is because we had our Global MBA students back on campus about 6 weeks ago, taking their MBA courses, looking forward. So we had our full-time MBA students back on campus 3 weeks ago, starting their new MBA program. So we're very much now back to our pre-pandemic structure of what the MBA looks like. So on that note, over to you, please, Eugenia.
Yeah, so I guess the face-to-face element to it was really attractive to me, and I wanted to build my network also in UK and among all the centers. So I actually did most of my face-to-face classes in Manchester, but I also did one elective in Dubai and one elective in Shanghai. So happy also to answer questions if there are any on this. But your typical day-to-day would be, so on each of the subjects or classes, you would have 2 full days, literally from the morning until the evening of activities. And first day would normally be dedicated to a presentation by the lecturer, but the presentation doesn't really describe it well. I'd say it's more of an interactive work where everyone in the class, and there would be, depending on the course, anything from 20 people to, I don't know what the maximum would be. I think I had like 60 or 70 people in the room for some of the classes. Discussing the subjects and exchanging opinions and exchanging your experiences, because obviously some of the people would have way more experience on certain subjects, like on finance, on marketing, or whatever it is. And there would be some of the people for whom it would be like a completely, uncharted territory. And this is what's interesting, right? Because you can, learn more about how this works in other countries, or how it works in other industries. And then typically on a second day, you, together with your group, would be giving a presentation where, you would use all the knowledge that you got from the first day of the workshops and all the information that, you read or you prepared prior to the course. And, this is when it becomes or it can become a little bit crazy, but crazy in a good way, in an exciting way, because obviously, to deliver this group presentation, sometimes with the people that you see for the first time in your life, you would need to, work as a group. And this is how you develop this kind of teamwork, cross-cultural competency, leadership skills, and so on. So you actually, apply it straight away, and you need to work in one team, and you need to deliver, because obviously, those presentations that you deliver, they are graded, and you as a team get one result. That's to sum up. I don't know, Lionel, if you want to jump in and give a bit more detail.
Yeah, no, I think you said it all. What I wanted to add is, and what I really liked about the experience is that you get really uncomfortable. It's not just come, we work on the presentation, but as Eugenia said, you have to work with different people from different culture, people from different backgrounds, and you have to work together to produce a decent presentation. And if I have an advice to give to the upcoming student, I will say, come prepared, the most as you can. We always say that, we never do it. But come prepared, it makes a huge difference, because you will be uncomfortable, especially the second night. You can finish really late, but it's the beauty of the program, because in real life, that's how it happens. Working in team and in groups. So yes, it was a very nice experience. Too.
Thank you, thank you both for that. And that's part of how we've purposely designed the program. When you come to Manchester or our global locations to attend the classes, they are very intensive. One of the things that we took on board just before the pandemic hit was comments by students saying it was too intensive. Lionel there mentioned about working late in the evenings. I'm not going to lie to you, absolutely that will be happening. The only difference being now is we are dedicating at least 2 evenings a week where it's completely there for, for networking, for more of the social type, the social elements of the MBA. So hopefully Eugenia and Lionel gave you all an insight there in terms to the face-to-face elements of the program. But of course, in addition to the workshop classes, there is online interaction required as well. On a from a daily, weekly to a monthly basis. Paul, would you like to give an insight to the audience in terms of the online elements of the program and what you may have found useful or challenging, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So again, online, I was pleasantly surprised to understand that the structure that's been put around the physical face-to-faces, transferred naturally across to online platforms as well. I found the Blackboard space very informative. So you've essentially got a space online whereby, everything you require to help not only progress your MBA, but track your own progress and set milestones and, I guess, internal plans is all there, and enables you to really take control of it, even in the periods where you're not in the classroom face to face. So I thought, the setup worked really well for those who are fond of setting a pace and sticking to it themselves and driving their own learning. And I do suggest as a word of advice, that is the best way. I certainly found continuously growing and not necessarily cramming ahead of face-to-face workshops served most people far better. And I think the online space gives you a real clean and clear environment for you to be able to do that and juggle what may be 2-3 different modules that may run concurrently. I guess further to that, I was again pleasantly surprised by just how much support you get online. So there's a natural awareness for your network that you'll attain and ultimately build with your peers and other students on the part-time Global MBA. But I was really happy with the level of support we got from tutors online, and it felt like they were always at the beck and call. And to some degree, from an expectation perspective, it certainly felt at points they went above and beyond to respond and make sure that you were appropriately informed to be able to progress. And naturally, depending on what's happened, and I operated within a pandemic, I can only speak on my own experience, but I don't think there was any more than sort of 24 hours dwell time between me posting a question to a tutor of a module or trying to get in contact and then being there with the answer or support or counsel required to help me keep kicking on. So yeah, I think it's a good online space that helps you structure your learning, track your progress, wealth of information. I think it's certainly set up for those who want information. I don't think you'll run out of resources in the context of books and academic support online, and there's always pointers and direction for those who want to go and ultimately digest more beyond the core material associated with the programme. So that's good as well, but certainly a good online support network, I'd say, as well. Anisha?
I was just going to say to Anisha, that's a tough act to follow.
It is. I mean, I would echo
plenty of questions. So
I would echo everything Paul said. To be honest with you, there's not much more I could add, other than the fact that for me, one of the best things was that the online lectures that you get building up to your workshops, the fact that they were offered maybe at multiple times, but also recorded, so that if you were unable to watch them live, you could watch them at your convenience. That was one of the best things for me, because for the first year of the MBA, I was in a different time zone to the UK. And so sometimes it wasn't always convenient for me to watch live. And Paul will remember there were times where we had workshops and they'd start at 11 a.m. UK time. And so I'd be up at 6 a.m. in New York, probably still in my pajamas joining a lecture, because it was the only feasible way to join it live. But with the online lectures, it was fantastic that you had that resource on Blackboard, like Paul said, recorded, available to you to watch when was convenient around your life. Also, if you needed it again, as you were perhaps working on an essay, to refer back to.
That's great. Thank you all there for giving insights to the face-to-face and the online elements. Something I'm asked, and the team's asked quite a lot, is things like, what does your school specialize in, or can you do an MBA in, you see MBAs in supply chain management, MBAs in finance. I even saw an MBA to become a football agent the other day, randomly enough. And we tend to say, the same answer. We're not a specialist MBA program. An MBA, as I mentioned earlier, is a general management qualification. With that being said, though, we do have, when you get to your elective stage, over 20 electives to choose from. So I'm going to hand over to Lionel here, and I might hand over to another one of you after that. But Lionel, can you share an insight with the audience about how did you select your electives? Did you have one area of specialization in your head, or did you decide to go, actually I'll have one element of this sort of topic and another element of something completely different? So over to you, please.
Yes, okay. Well, for me it was both. because in my day job, I focus on entrepreneurs and innovations. So I wanted to have electives in those fields so I can increase my skills for my personal career. But at the same time, there were so many areas for personal growth. So I picked actually one other elective, which was the negotiations one. So it was both. I picked electives for my personal career, but also for the room for personal growth as well.
Excellent, thanks. So this is just a note to the audience where Rupert and myself are seeing the questions that you're asking, and we will get to them. One of the questions has been about the live company project, which I'm going to get to actually momentarily. But before I do that, Paul, Eugenia, Anisha, is there anything you feel you want to add in terms of elective choices, the strategy, the difficulty? I think Lionel answered that question pretty well, but just to give you all an opportunity if anyone wants to add anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so I've chosen, I think, I did choose B2B marketing and international business strategy, which was something, you know, relevant to my line of business, because I wanted a little bit more structure on this. But I also did negotiation skills as Lionel, and that was amazing, because back then I just was assuming responsibility for Middle East, and you know, I chose then to go to Dubai to do this workshop in Dubai to understand how, you know, actually cultural wise they negotiate in Middle East, and I totally got what I wanted, because you know they do have very specific way of doing that in a good way, and I was able to gain this experience through MBS, so that was really good.
I think if I go on, go Paul.
You sure? I was just going to say, there's a lot of choice, which for me is really positive. You know, I know a few people that structured their approach slightly differently to myself, but naturally there's that much choice that you could go down a number of options. I decided to split my electives with, you know, 2 items that were focused on progressing my career within the company that I was working for. That was funding and supporting ultimately my MBA in this case, but taking the 3rd elective as a bit of a personal choice and doing something diverse that for me wouldn't benefit my company or myself in role, but would broaden me and potentially benefit some change outside of where I am. So I just thought it was that good that it offered such diversification that there were actually pleasant options in there that I wouldn't have naturally aspired to or thought about associated with what I was doing. So I think that's the only thing I'd probably add. There is a good level of diversity in elective modules also. Sorry, Nisha.
It's all right. I was just going to say one final thing to follow on from the diversity is it's worth looking at the electives and what each one requires of you. I found that some electives were structured with maybe 4 assignments that were each worth 25%, but then others had just 2 assignments with one worth 20 and one worth 80%. And so it's worth not just looking at the content of the course and what that can bring to you, but what the requirements are, because then you understand your time commitments to it, how you're going to balance it around work, your lifestyle. And to me, that was equally as important in terms of choosing the topics, because I wanted topics that were relevant to my work or good for my personal development, but I also didn't want to do badly, if that makes sense. And I wanted to be sure that I could dedicate the time to the types of assignments that those electives were asking of me.
On that note, Anisha, I'm gonna keep with you, because one of the participants has asked specifically about time commitment. How did you manage to balance everything, you know, on a weekly basis? So anything that you can add in terms of your strategy with regards to managing your work, personal life, and then MBA life, please.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I don't like to do things by half. So amidst the global pandemic, I chose to move back to the UK, have a baby and do an MBA, because, you know, why make life boring? So one of the things I found that was really important was dedicating time and sort of agreeing that with my partner to know to expectation set as to when I was going to be studying, when I was going to have workshops, and also understanding that at work, I had to sort of play the long game, really. I couldn't spend as many hours staying late at work because I had to go home to study, but I knew it was for the benefit of my career in the long term. So I almost had to become less of a perfectionist to be able to achieve greater in the long run. A couple of techniques that I found that worked really well. Like I said, the first was agreeing times with my partner, very clearly marking out in the calendar when I had workshops, when I had online lectures, when I was expecting to need a couple of days to write an essay, those sorts of things, so that he could equally plan his life around, or we could work grandparents into the situation to help with childcare. Those sorts of things really helped in advance. The second thing was having a really strong network of friends on the course. And that's not just people on the course, that's people that became your friends and could be your cheerleaders through the course alongside you as you go. People for me, like Paul, like other people that I've met, where if we're working on assignments at the same time, you can sort of say, hey, can you cross-read this for me because we're in the same group, make sure it makes sense. I'm struggling with this. Have you found any good resources? Equally, come on, you can do this. Let's set aside 2 hours where we'll both sit down tonight and meet up at John Rylands Library and power through some reading or some essay writing. The support network, both at home and on the course, I think were two of the key things for time management in making sure that I could balance work, family life, and the MBA all at the same time.
And just one other thing, please, Nisha, because I see a question, I think, from Nicola here, and I'm pretty sure you've told me previously when we're discussing flexibility that you did delay one of your courses, or maybe a semester.
Yeah,
she was asking about that. You know, yeah, we're talking about flexibility. Paul's mentioned flexibility a few times, but in practice, what does that mean? And I think you've got a tangible example.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my little girl in March this year, and that's exactly when a lot of the workshops take place. So obviously I knew in advance I wasn't going to be able to do those workshops. So if you approach the student support team at Manchester, they're fantastic in helping you defer either core modules or elective modules, whether it's because of childcare, whether it's because of work commitments that have arisen because of COVID or other situations that might have happened. And so what I did is I carried on with one of my core modules. And whilst I should have completed my MBA in July with Paul, I actually completed my MBA last week with my last workshop, because what I did is that last elective that I was supposed to do in spring, I deferred to the autumn when I knew I'd have a little bit more time. I wasn't maybe going to be sat in a hospital bed, and it was achievable. And the team are fantastic about that. You just have to make sure that you are aware of the situation in advance and can tell the team, and they can then help in terms of how that will affect your fee structure, how that will affect your overall schedule, how that will affect your graduation date, and they will map it all out for you and help you detail how that will affect which electives you take with each term going forward as well.
Excellent, thanks. I think that was really insightful in terms of strategy for planning your workload during an MBA, and there you gave a very good tangible example of how you use the flexibility of the program that that we often speak about. Going on to a question from I think it's Win here, who wanted more information about the live company project. So Eugenia, perhaps you could share details of your project. How did you go about it? Was it a team project? Was it an individual project? How did you pick the topic, stroke company? That type of information, please.
Yeah, so I did a group project, and we've chosen like 5 of us. We were all placed in different countries, but we kind of found good chemistry between us because we were working together on one of the workshops. So we all met face to face once, and then decided that we are a good fit together to actually then work on the final project towards the end of the MBA. We really wanted the topic of the project to be relevant for all of us. So that was around the online learning and development for the employees within a company. So essentially a topic that you can, all of you can relate to it because you can use it in any company. And the company that we chose back then was Deutsche Bahn. It's ultimately monopolist in Germany for the railways. And one of us has been working there. So he got access to a lot of information and resources internally, which Deutsche Bahn graciously agreed, for us to use. So we got official permissions and everything. And that was an exciting, a very exciting project. So that guy actually who had been working with Deutsche Bahn, he, I think, got promoted as a result of this final project. So again, your progression right there. And at the same time, the kind of the information, the conclusions, and like all the data from the project, we all could have used it within our companies as well. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much, Eugenia. Over to you now. I think, Paul, you mentioned, I think you've touched on it, about how, and it's a question that people often wonder, in terms of the value of an MBA, how it's going to help you internally in your organization, because many people are doing the MBA almost to get to the next step. They're not everyone who does a professional MBA is looking to completely switch, looking to completely switch industries. So I'm interested, Paul, how have your employers and maybe peers in your organization viewed your MBA? Has there been positive or even negative reactions to it?
Well, I think it's certainly been positive. I think it helps sort of weed out those who are genuinely thinking over the long term and wanting to support your growth over the long term, because I think an MBA really sets you up to do that. It's not a short-term commitment stroke intervention for gaining the same sort of annual period. You're setting yourself up for the next couple of decades, depending on where you are in your career. So for me, it was received well. It was something that I went out and drove for. So it certainly wasn't handed for me. It was something that, when taking hold of my own development and growth, and trying to fill gaps, in the context of what I want to do moving forward, it was something that I felt would be really rewarding and value adding. So I proposed that to my business, to a number of senior stakeholders and my network, who in the majority were positive in response. Obviously, it's seen as a significant investment, and if I'm honest, this is something that I'd have invested myself in terms of funding, should I've been asked to, albeit in my position with my company, they were heavily supportive and understood the return that I'd give myself as an individual, but also the organisation, and thinking a bit wider, my peers and the teams working for me. And I think I've seen some of that. So, off the back of naturally sharing my experiences, be it informally, as part of leadership conversations, or just telling stories and bringing teams along with these experiences. We've had quite a prick of conscience across the board, and there's a number of individuals now seeking to understand whether it fits themselves, where they are in their career and their development as well. And as Chris has said, and a few of my peers on this panel, it's not ultimately for everyone, but for those who are in the right position within their mindset, career, academic journey, it can certainly offer a lot. So it's something that I went out and sought, but my company was overwhelmingly sort of supportive. And since me embarking on this MBA, there have been a number of others off the back of, I think, my journey that have made a start. Some of them this year with Chris and the Manchester MBA team.
Excellent, thanks. And you've mentioned an important point there, which I think James in the audience has also asked the question, and I don't know the answer on this in terms of all of you, because I didn't check with you. So I'm going to pick Lionel based on having walked into a number of consultancies around the world and asked them to fund people to do an MBA and get them kick me out the door. So Lionel, am I right in assuming that you paid for this MBA yourself, or did they fund it?
It was both. Yeah, I paid for myself, and I got a grant from the city of Toronto to fund my MBA. Yeah.
Okay, and excellent in terms of the grants there from the city of Toronto. I certainly know, like the UK, very difficult to get additional funding. But I'm going to stick with you on this, Lionel, just because I spoke about world-class business schools at the very start of this. I know three top MBA programs in Toronto. I also know or have an idea on the price tag on some of those MBAs. So what, you know, when you think about the price of the MBA, the Manchester MBA, where we are, ranked in terms of a global school, is there anything you would mention to the audience with regards to the value for money, especially when you compare it to comparable business schools?
Yeah, that was actually one of the other reason why I picked the Manchester program. It was the value for money, because when you compare with the top MBAs in Canada, in Toronto, in Canada, and in the US, I think the value is higher, personally, because of the access to the diversity of the network. In Canada, the diversity of the network I would have been lesser than the one I had through the Global MBA in Manchester. So that was a big reason why I decided to do it there. But also in terms of pricing, I think it's not. It's a difficult question that you're asking me right now. But I think, yeah, you up there with the best MBAs.
I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a difficult question, but also, you know, important for the audience. So we have it's a minimum of 60% of our students who fund the MBA program themselves. So at different years, we can get up to 40% who are very fortunate to have some sort of sponsorship from their organization. That is a number that's likely to start decreasing over the next few years. So financing your MBA is something that I think, you know, everyone needs to consider. If you can get the company funding, great. If not, then you really do need to look at the value proposition. I spoke about traditional executive MBAs earlier, saying about, you know, 70, 80, 90 days of face-to-face contact. Great, but they also come with a price tag of about 100K plus. Now, I'm seeing that we're getting towards the end, so this is a final question. I'm going to ask it for all of you. We'll go Eugenia, Anisha, Paul, and Lionel. What final piece of advice, general advice, do you want to give to the audience? Do you want the audience to leave with in terms of their MBA research? You know, some of them will still be considering whether they need an MBA. Some of them will be considering whether to do an MBA in Europe, North America. Some will be deciding, you know, how do I pick between all these program structures? So any final piece of advice, whatever it is that you think, to the audience. Over to you, Anisha. Oh, sorry, and to the audience, Rupert and myself are going to get to some of the questions that haven't been answered momentarily as well.
Sure, yeah. If you want me to go first, I'd really say, like, go for it. The fact that you are here now on, you know, on this webinar means that you have the interest. And I'd say, you know, the earlier you make it, the earlier you do your MBA, the more time of your professional life you actually have, you know, using all the benefits of this MBA, including the network, including the knowledge, including your ability to use this, you know, bird's eye view and discuss all the P&L and lines of business and revenue streams at the C-level, right? So definitely go for it. Think holistically about, like, where you are now and where you want to be, kind of what your point A and point B are. And yes, I mean, if that requires your own self-funding, which was actually the case for me, just, you know, factoring into your expenses. And I guess, again, you know, me sharing some good stories and success stories, but what happened in my case, I did self-fund my MBA. But when I was at my second year, my VP changed, and the new VP, when he stepped in, he said, okay, you're doing an MBA, that's quite an investment from your end, and he chipped in like 20% of the tuition fee for me from his own, like, employee morale fund. I don't promise that it happens to you, but stories like this happen. So yeah.
Thanks.
I think for me, if you're still on the fence and trying to decide between different schools, one of the things I would recommend is looking at where the people from those schools have gone, whether you look at the statistics from the university, whether you take a look on LinkedIn, at alumni from those schools, take a look at where those people have gone, choose a school for you. And for me, it was Manchester. The people graduating from that MBA are going on to do the sorts of things that you want to do, where MBA, the business school has those links to the industry or the roles, or they have the electives that will contribute to you getting that position. And I think if you're still on the fence about choosing an MBA or choosing between business schools, that's one of the easiest ways to decipher. For me, it took me straight to Manchester Business School because it showed me that people from Manchester Business School were doing the sort of thing I wanted to do. Manchester Business School had the types of electives that would help my career go where I wanted it to go. And I think leveling up and weighing up those different things and doing that level of research helps you choose the right school for you.
So I just add to that. I think the decision's got to be right for yourself. I think you know, once you've made the commitment, if it's the right thing to pursue an MBA, I do think, you know, Manchester, certainly in the context of UK providers, is a great option. I do think it's value for money when you look at facilities, diversity of network, and strength of material and academic teams. It just so happened that it helped me because I'm Manchester based. I live in the city, work across the UK and I guess worldwide sometimes, and I wanted a provider that was close to my base. But, you know, having looked at some of the providers even down south, because I do have an office in London, I just found it was better value for money in the context of what you get for your investment from Manchester. But I would say my advice is, you know, once you do make that decision to press ahead, you know, commit to it fully. Commit to get the most out of it and treat it as a priority within your life along with other priorities, because I do think it's certainly, you know, it's quite cliche, but it's certainly one of those where you get out of it what you put in, and the more you put in continually rather than in big bursts, I think you will grow far more from it as an individual, and ultimately your career should benefit from that also.
Excellent. And the final word to you, Lionel.
Yeah, everything has been said, but I just wanted to add that do it for the good reason, because it will help you commit. Because as Paul said, once you start, you have to commit to it, and knowing the reason why you are doing it commits you to the MBA. So do it for the right reason.
Do the MBA for the right reasons. Yes, I think that's a great final point. So thank you all very much, Anisha, Paul, Lionel, Eugenia, for joining us. I think that's been really insightful for the audience. I think they'll have had they've definitely had some good information from all four of you there. So yeah, thanks again. The four of you are free to leave. I know you've got other things on, and so thank you once again. And for the rest of the audience, by all means, I also know you're all extremely busy people. If you do want to leave now, by all means do. Alternatively, if you want to hang on the Zoom, myself and Rupert Liddington are still going to be here, and we will answer any outstanding questions as well.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
So much, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.